So there are 3 things you're not supposed to do when talking about JoJo's. Number 1, talk about how GR is not the strongest stand in JoJo's. Number 2, mention parts 6 and 7 in the same sentence on Twitter. And number 3, and probably I think low-key the biggest one, giving reasonings why a certain ending in JoJo is bad or good, or stating one is better than the other, as it will always lead to some type of argument anywhere you go. But clearly I don't fear for my safety because I've done all 3. So I'm going to clarify this at the beginning. I am not going super crazy. This is probably, in all honesty, going to be me nitpicking and like going very casual how I view these endings until I get to the later half where I just have to go full fanboy. I know I'm going to make a lot of people pissed off, but who cares? Screw it. Welcome to my list. I hope you enjoy. So coming in at number 8 at the bottom of my list is Part 2, Battle Tendency. I have had personally a very interesting relationship with this part over the years. It's not my favorite. It's not the thing that really got me into JoJo's, like for a lot of people. Sure, the memes are funny, but I never got the appeal of Part 2 very heavily while I was growing into JoJo's up until now. My relationship with the part has grown a lot since then, but there's just one thing that I can never get over, and it's the ending. It just doesn't feel like an ending and is kind of, in my opinion, really short for an ending. I'm the type of guy that likes his endings drawn out a little bit and does feel like an ending does make or break your story. And what I mean by a drawn out ending is like you're just sitting with the story. You have to reflect on past events and just sit with it while the ending is still going forward while you're still sitting there. But that's the thing, within Part 2, that doesn't happen. In an extremely short time period, you go from the birth of Ultimate Cars to him getting launched into space because of volcano shenanigans. I've learned to accept that just happened, and luck and fate in JoJo's is a literal in-lore thing. I don't care anymore. A past me would have got angry at it. I will not get angry at it. To then Joseph dying, to everybody grieving to him, to then Joseph not being dead, into everybody's lore at the end of Part 2 being explained in a very tell and not show way, which I hate, to then the lead up into Part 3 with Joseph at the end of Part 2. And that all happens in like 5 chapters. What? The ending of Part 2 feels very fast to me. The pacing just goes off the wall. I'm thrown lore to the face. I have to analyze that lore. I also have to analyze the death of the main character. That's a fake out. And then the main character story still continues onward and still grows after this point, making it kind of feel like the story is not really over. As it's technically not, as there's a grander theme in JoJo and its story, but like for Part 2 in general, it just doesn't feel proper. I feel like if you just took out things from the part and just left it the 5 chapters it was, yeah, it would have been fine. Just the death of Ultimate Cars, Joseph dying, people finding out that Joseph isn't dead, boom, done. Leave it like that. That would have been fine. But there's like all this added things thrown in, and it's just like, whoa, this is poorly done and not shown correctly, and just is really bad, at least in my opinion. It can be done correctly and eventually is done correctly with the later parts, but like this time it's done poorly, and I feel like it hinders the ending of Part 2. Word of advice for future authors out there: don't cram a lot of things in your ending. Just let it flow out naturally. So coming in at number 7 is Part 5. So this is pretty crazy. I actually enjoy Part 5 a lot. It's in my top 3, but the reason why it's not any higher in my top 3 is because of the ending. I think it's pretty mediocre. It's passable. So within the ending, Giorno eventually gains GR, defeats Diavolo, putting him in the infinite death loop. Pretty good so far. I like it. Everybody's bodies start to wake up. Everybody seems okay. Giorno's going to become the gang leader. Cool. Then the weird like fate ideas come in with Rolling Stones. Now the reason why this is above Part 2 is because this is done better because it's in a whole like epilogue arc. And I think that's a lot better than it was in Part 2 with everything just being told to you. This is shown. And I think it's fairly done a lot better. Then we get stuff with Polnareff and what's going to happen with him, and then Giorno becomes the gang boss. End of story. That is significantly better than Part 2. It feels overall less congested than Part 2, making it feel much more enjoyable. And due to Part 5 and eventually Part 4's almost separation from the other parts, as they are connected to them, but they don't connect themselves back into it as they're not mentioned afterwards, making it kind of feel like these endings just work by themselves and not as a whole to the grander story of JoJo. but they're still there because, you know, they're still part of JoJo's. You just can't forget about them. Overall, what I would say about part 5 is that it still has the elements of part 2 and its bad workings, but they're much more digestible here and the story flows out much better than previous. Like I said, passable. So coming in at number 6, we have part 1. This one is good, and I will stand on my ground for that forever till I die. I like this ending a lot because how significant it is for everything afterwards. You'll realize from this point onward, all the parts have meaning at the very ending of their story that actually hits for me. That's why they get placed so high. And the significant meaning here is that Jonathan is dead and now will cause generational trauma caused by Dio moving on forward until the end of the universe. Quite literally. This is the bad guys win ending, and within all the parts of JoJo, this is the only time this ever happens, where the bad guy wins. And out of sheer uniqueness due to this ending, I feel like personally I have to place it higher, just because I'm like that. And my next thing here is this. There's nothing else here. It's just Jonathan loses and Erina is able to get away starting the events of part 2. And then it ends. There's nothing extra. It just smoothly flows out to the ending, leading into the next part correctly this time, unlike part 2, which just feels a lot more abrupt. And to quickly backtrack, the final fight with the villain here in part 1 is a lot better than parts 2 and 5 because it's an actual fight and not just some either luck based or power up based win. The reason why I didn't bring those up previously is because, well, they're okay, I'm fine with them, but here I genuinely enjoy the final climactic fight before the ending, which I feel like personally brings it up just a smidge higher than the previous 2 entries for part 1. Overall, pretty good. I enjoy part 1's ending a lot. So coming in at number 5, the one I'm most conflicted about and the most recent one, part 8, JoJolion. Good God, what do I have to say here, dude? OMG. I'm gonna have to state my reasonings here on why I'm conflicted. Good part, really good part, really weird ending villain that just somehow gets really rushed in at the very end, unlike other previous villains. Barely any backstory to the villain, very similar to Cars or Diavolo, but the overall story ends really well. The curse is broken, Josuke finds his identity, learns how to accept it. There is a power-up, but the power-up's kind of symbolic in the whole sense of Josuke finding his identity. The Wonder Review fight is really good. It's so weird for me to explain this out loud in video form because I've thought about it for so long, but it's like bad. But then Araki shows his experience and knows how to write extremely well at the age he's at and the many career years he's been at this, and it's like, it's not bad once you reread it and get to know it a little bit more. So I'm just in this really conflicted state of, it's good, but like, damn it. But I was lying. I know why, audience. I can tell you, viewer. It's the Radio Gaga incident. I fucking hate it. It is so random and so abrupt. It doesn't make any sense. And I understand a lot of people are gonna say, but it's like lore reasons, right? Like, it's just for lore to explain little things about Toru's details, maybe about stuff about Lucy and stuff like that. I don't care. It's stupid. Why is it here? Why is it placed at the ending? This is the type of stuff you should get in probably part 9, in all honesty. I'll explain that reasoning later. But like right now, you could have said this stuff during the Vitamin C arc or a whole different arc in and of itself in the middle of JoJolion to answer these questions. Right now? Seriously? At the ending? The curse is already broken. Josuke has already accepted himself. Why am I getting shit about Lucy's steal and Josuke here at the ending? Why? Like, Toru was already a weird villain in and of itself, and we don't get a lot about him, and it makes a lot of people not like him. For me, Toru is a guilty pleasure. I do like him a lot, and it adds to him here, but like, not in a good way. It just makes people feel a lot more like, what the fuck? I don't like where this is placed, and it just ruins the ending here for me. But it's then all of a sudden changed with how wholesome it ends with Josuke and family, and how the curse has been broken and they can just be a good family now. And I like that a lot. It's just this really weird abrupt middle part that's just, I'm confused, and I would love to place this higher on the list because I actually like this ending a lot. I like the Wonder Review fight. I like this part, but why the hell is this here? There's no reason for it. It just adds lore that's confusing and just not very interesting here at the ending of the part. you could have placed it somewhere else, but it's not. And to answer the question, probably a few of you have, why is it actually here, Metas? Well, fun fact, in an interview, Araki wanted to explain the lore of Joseph Joestar for some reason right now to eventually make the whole thing make sense why Jodio's family is in America that eventually moves to Hawaii. That's it. That's the reasoning why it just kind of shows up at the end of JoJolion. And I quite frankly want to ask why, and it's really dumb. Like, why? This is useless. You could have put this anywhere else to explain this, even though, because like in the beginning of their own parts, that stuff gets answered anyway, which it does in part 9. So this whole part 8 intro to part 9 thing just doesn't make sense in hindsight, like at all, and just kind of ruins the ending a bit. But I still like it a lot personally because of how many things get answered in JoJolion and how sweet and wholesome it is. And it just, I'm conflicted on this ending a lot. I've held that in for a very long time. I hope you enjoyed that rant / ranking of part 8 JoJolion. So now coming in at number 4 is part 3 Stardust Crusaders. This one I like a lot. The reason being is that this ending is possibly the most straightforward ending out of all the parts. It's really basic, but that's good. What I mean by that is after defeating the ultimate evil Dio, Jotaro and Joseph and Polnareff get to have a happy ending, technically enclosed within the first 3 parts of the series. Monkey. As part 3 ends in such a way that you can read parts 1, 2, and 3 and you wouldn't need to read the rest of JoJo's anymore, technically speaking, because the whole goal of the series was to defeat Dio, and how it ends is everybody just gets to go back to their normal lives, technically. And there you go. It ends with that. There's no extra lore bits. There's no really crazy reactions. It just ends with Holly being happy and the boys leaving each other. The only thing I would add here is maybe some more specific things involving Joseph and Jotaro, how they feel at the end of the story, maybe some dialogue or more panels or text. It just, I don't know, ending abruptly seems wrong, but it just ends a little too fast. I wish we got a little bit more panel work with them. That's basically my only criticism. It ends pretty vanilla, but that's good. I like that. I don't really have a lot to nitpick here. It's just everything above this part just has a lot more thematic weight behind it because, fun fact, this isn't where the series ends and it still keeps on going after this. So that also kind of hinders it a little bit in my mind because it's like Dio's dead. No, he's not. His effects are still plaguing the universe after the fact, but that's kind of besides the point. Just narrowly looking at this ending, it's good. Thumbs up. 2 thumbs up, actually. Okay, top 3. Let's see how many people I can piss off.
What's that ominous glow in the distance?
Coming in at number 3 is Diamond is Unbreakable. Probably one of my favorite parts in all of JoJo, depending on when you ask me. It might be my 3rd, it might be my 2nd, it might even be my 1st, depending on the day of the week. But when it comes to this ending, it is definitely consistently in this top 3 for a lot of reasons. The first being, well, it's self-contained, and the story just ends with Jotaro and Josuke kind of saying, "Nah, Josuke, you got this. You can protect the town without me being here." A almost passing of the torch in full now. On top of that, Kira has been fully defeated, and the only thing left lingering here is the fact that the healing process has to occur for the town. As the curse of Kira and its wounds still hurt the body of Morio, but as all bodies do heal, it will be fine at the end of the day with Josuke protecting them. That's a good message, and I like it a lot, on top of the fact that everybody can live normal lives again now. And since there's really no continuation on from this part other than Koichi just going off doing some random side quests, it genuinely feels like it properly ends here for Morio until part 8 shows up, but that's a completely different universe, so that doesn't matter here. Good ending. I can't nitpick a lot here. It's just, I feel satisfied with this ending. That's what I want to say. I feel satisfied. Kira is defeated. Josuke gets the mantle of protecting the town from Jotaro. The Morio warriors can just live normal lives again with stand powers, of course, but it's good. I feel satisfied. There's nothing I can really nitpick here other than there's lore that's added at the end of this part, but overall, it's not crazy or anything. It's just like little factual tidbits about people. It's not over encumbering. It lasts like a page or 2. It's a good ending. I can deal with that, but everything else just really weighs over that nitpick, so just, it's good. I like part 4's ending. It's a good ending. Also, out of all the villain deaths in all of JoJo, personally for me, Kira being sent to hell and then eventually becoming a ghost, if you want to treat Dead Man's Questions as an actual canon story, is really satisfying. Seeing this guy literally not being able to pass over into the other world is like a really just poetic way of saying fuck you to serial killers. It's just beautiful, beautiful chef's kiss. I love it. Great ending. I love it. So coming in at number 2. This one's gonna be maybe a bit controversial for a lot of seinen fans out there. Steel Ball Run in number 2. Ooh boy, what do I say here, dude? Oh my lord. Near perfection. That's what I would say. Steel Ball Run is near perfection. The only reason why it doesn't get a perfect score is because it's not. The ending to its own universe's part. That's what I will say, as of course when we get to number 1 that will make more sense. But as its own individual story of its own universe and its own accord, I think this is probably one of the greatest single JoJo endings ever, because there is so much here that just ends up making me satisfied. Why I say that is because there's no loose ends. There's nothing. Johnny goes from negative in life to eventually positive in life, and we see his growth and change throughout the entire last part extremely heavily. The death of Gyro eventually leads him into Tusk Act 4 and beating Funny Valentine, proving so many of his philosophies right, and just the fight with Dio and the callbacks to that fight and those two characters' interactions. Like, I wish I'm gonna have to make my own video on Steel Ball Run's ending eventually, but just briefly talking over it so I don't have to like make a 20-minute segment here. It ends beautifully. There is lore that gets added, but it lasts for a single page. Doesn't matter. I don't like that. I think that's a consistent theme all of you are getting through, but like how it ends, Johnny's happy and fulfilled, and he lives on later in life. He gets to walk again. And how there's narration at the very end of part 7 and 8 here is really good, as it almost kind of makes me, the reader, just feel satisfied just hearing kind of the conclusion, the ending thesis almost to these parts, at least in written form. It's good. There's just so much I can say about this part. The writing is just a chef's kiss, man. Beautiful. Just beautiful. Now we are at number 1. Now this one should have been pretty obvious if you know my channel's history and what I've said in the past. I love part 6 ending a lot. To make a bit of a contradictory statement for this entire video, there might be an idea to say that while parts in JoJo end, the storyline actually doesn't end. So when you get to part 6, this is where the storyline actually ends, at least for the original universe. And it ends by the Joestars sacrificing themselves for the greater good, eventually relinquishing the title of JoJo as it's no longer needed in this part. I've said this in the past about a few times now, and that idea, how they just sacrifice themselves for everybody else's sake and eventually get remade / reborn into a new universe, leaving the title of JoJo behind, making them regular people with regular lives, is a good ending I think Jonathan and every JoJo would have loved. And just how Emporio cries over his dead friends and how he just has to see them again just hits the heart, man. It's a good ending. It's bitter and sour, but there's just love behind it, and it hits me, man. It really does. And it's like all the previous parts endings just all culminate back into this one, the actual true ending of JoJo, if you really wanted to look at it like that. And if you did, there'd only be 3 endings: Steel Ball Run, JoJolion, and Stone Ocean, which would be a very short video. There's nothing I can even nitpick at this ending about. I genuinely and honestly think it is perfect. It is a happy ending for the overall original universe of JoJo. Well, that's the end of the video. I had fun with this. This was not scripted at all. I was just kind of speaking from the heart about my problems about these parts. Very briefly, I didn't try to go really too crazy in depth with any of this. Just try to have fun here and explain why I think some endings are better than the others and why some endings are worse than the others. Just me having fun. I hope you guys don't get too toxic in the comment section, but I can't really bet on that. So, yeah, that's about it. Like, comment, share, subscribe, follow me on Twitter. Stay hydrated. See you in the next one, ladies and gentlemen.